Now I got to leave that fart part in. I was going to cut that out. Oh.
You can't cut it out.
It was a slip of the tongue, Cat. I'm sorry.
Welcome back to another episode of 1980s Now, a weekly examination. I'm seeing if I can do it from memory. A weekly examination. A weekly examination of
1980s pop culture.
1980s pop culture.
And its continued influence
today. My name is Will.
Yeah, yep. That's right.
And joining me, as always, are my friend and co-host, Kat, and the man who gives great hugs, Sean.
Howdy.
All four of him. With sitting on phone books.
Exactly.
Hi, guys.
And don't you dare forget, in addition to his co-hosting duties here, John also hosts his very own podcast, Gen X Grown Up.
Yes.
Hey, on today's show, I'm very excited about this. We're going to be speaking with the former president of Pressman Toy, Jim Pressman. I mean, his name is in it. And his wife, Donna Pressman, will also be joining us. Jim and Donna just put together this book. I'm looking for the book. Like, I can't talk about it without actually holding it.
You're probably sitting on it, right?
It's heavy,
You're trying to
too.
get taller than John.
Yeah, I want to be 5'5". 5'2". It's a century of American toys and games, the story of Pressman Toy, how one family shaped the way we play. And it really is chronology of the work that this family did for decades, because it's the 100th year anniversary this year, 2022, to bring us, our families, hours and hours of joy and companionship and bonding and arguments and
squabbles and
Well, we could talk more about
still today. Yeah.
Game experiences.
We have Pressman games in the regular rotation even today.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to quiz you about it later. Not a game, not a real game, John. Just
damn it, he's got me.
We better have a game for an episode about games.
But before that, before we talk to the Pressmans, we're going to review current news stories related to 1980s media, including a new Super Mario Brothers. Super Mario or Super Mario? How do you guys say it? Mario.
Oh,
Mario.
I say Mario.
Yeah, Mario.
I think I say Mario.
I think it was a New Jersey thing. Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah,
Mario.
Hey, I got it from Mario. You know, the kid down the street.
Mario.
Super Mario Brothers trailer just dropped. Some behind-the-scenes details about Disney Plus's new Willow series and the trailer and the name of the forthcoming Indiana Jones sequel. They're finally here. There's time codes in the show. Oh my God, that's one of the best aspects of the trailer.
I know. We'll get there.
Okay. And as if it were planned, we have the perfect sponsor for this episode. I'm going to tell you a little bit later about the place where I buy all my games, board games, RPGs, accessories, and you can too. I'm talking about Recess Games.
Well,
you can find them at recess.net. recess.net, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them later on. Hey, time codes are in the show notes if you'd like to skip around. All right, hey, let's get caught up on 1980s. Yeah, look, we just teased it, and here we are. This week in 1980s news, this is what I wrote, Kat, based on something that you had sent over. Were we wrong?
Elmer!
Were we wrong about Chris Pratt's Mario? All right, so look, we finally got to see the trailer, or the latest trailer, because we did have a shorter trailer. It's just, maybe a month or so ago. But now we get to see more characters. We get to hear Anya Taylor-Joy's Peach, Charlie Day as Luigi, Jack Black again as Bowser. We get to see Donkey Kong now. And finally, we get to hear some more words from Chris Pratt as Mario.
I contemplated not watching this so that I could live watch it again, live react, yeah. But I
Is that what you did?
myself.
Or did you watch it?
I watched it.
Oh, good.
Well, great.
Couldn't help myself.
I forgot to tell you, Kat, one of the greatest things that I really love about you is when you tell us about content that you were going to provide, but that you ultimately decided not to. That's really cool. That's fun for the show. There's an expression about that, something about the intentions
Oops.
in the pathway somewhere. All right, hey.
Is this...
Oh, man.
Look, anyways,
Kat, thanks for taking all the abuse from me this show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, hang on, John. I'm coming for you.
Okay, fair enough.
No, I'm not. I'm not.
It's time to play.
I got a bad feeling about this.
All right. So, what did you guys think about this latest trailer?
I enjoyed watching it, and I'm okay with the voice.
Oh,
I think it's cool. I'm fine with it. Uh-oh. Looks like you guys disagree. I want to say something about one of the other voices, though. I'm listening to Princess Peach.
yeah.
I'm like, that's so familiar.
Oh,
so
wow.
familiar. And then I forgot who it was, and I looked it up.
Yeah.
And it's from the Queen's Gambit, the actress from the Queen's Gambit,
Right.
which I loved. Yeah.
Right. Anya Taylor-Joy.
But I'm okay with Mario's voice.
Well, the trailer itself, I thought was great. I guess it's almost like it felt like a checklist for fans.
That was a long checklist.
It was like,
yes.
I can imagine, somebody going, if you do a Mario movie, it damn well better have this in it.
Yeah.
And what's the list? Rainbow Road,
Rainbow
Super
Road.
Smash Brothers, Fire Flower, mushrooms, the fish, the laiku or whatever I forget they're called, the jump across, like the blocks you step on and they quickly turn red and fall.
Right.
Every little like mechanic that you would imagine a Super Mario fan had to see. They're like, all right, let's just squash this now and show them all the stuff they hope is in the movie.
Yeah.
And the next trailer we'll talk about story, because there was no story here. It was just set pieces showing off all the stuff and the fan service, which was fun. And I think it all looked great. Yeah, ask about the Chris Pratt voice. It just sounds like Chris Pratt doing a Mario impression to me still.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I wonder if I would have known, if I didn't know that it was Chris Pratt. I wonder if I would have been able to figure that out. Not necessarily. I don't think so.
Yeah. I thought, like you guys said, I agree. It looked fantastic. The animation, it's Illumination. You don't have to worry about that. That's going to be fine. And, working so closely with Nintendo to make sure it's in the spirit and style that they are consistent with their games. Not worried about that. Yeah, I thought, John, my thought was with regard to the Easter eggs and the things being checked off. Holy cow, why are they so worried that we might not like this? And then we only heard maybe 4 or 5 seconds worth of Mario's voice,
Right.
whereas other characters are talking at length.
We're talking much more, yes.
I did dig some of the Easter eggs, John, that at least spoke to our generation. Seemed like you were callbacks to the original game, where you saw that. It looks like an 8-bit Donkey Kong in the sort of the background of that Coliseum.
Yes.
And of course, they're fighting on the platform that's could be Smash Brothers, but it's also the original game, those girders.
Or it's like a Donkey Kong ziggurat that they would play on together, right?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, that was cool.
And I got to say, my man Donkey Kong absolutely pummeled Mario.
Yes. Yeah. We didn't get to hear Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong, but he did. Yeah, he made quite an appearance there.
He did, yeah.
But it seems to be right that Mario and Luigi come from our world, so to speak, and are transported to this magical land. So he is a fish out of water tale. I don't know what he should be expecting to be able to fight an anthropomorphic gorilla.
My favorite part of the entire trailer had nothing to do with Mario or Donkey Kong, which are my two favorite characters.
What
but
was it?
my favorite part actually wasn't the fart. It wasn't the fart.
It wasn't the fart.
There goes your
I didn't even know about that. That's an Easter egg. That's a deep cut.
It actually wasn't the part of the trailer I liked. It was what the trailer showed off, and that was some pretty smart writing. And that was a little scene between Bowser and Luigi.
Oh, yes, right.
And he's holding him there, and he's like, what makes you think that I know every other human that has a mustache that looks like me, that has the first initial of his name on his hat? Well, I don't. It was just really smart. And I'm like, that's the kind of writing that it's not just, Mario. There's some clever stuff in there. So that's optimistic for me.
I forgot about that. Yeah, that drew my attention as well.
You know what occurred to me when I was watching it? I really liked that scene as well. And what occurred to me was Charlie Day doesn't sound like what we'd expect from Luigi based on the video games. But for some reason, and I don't think it's because I love Charlie Day, that didn't bother me at all. That he sounded the way he
seemed
did.
fine.
He seemed fine. But Chris Pratt, I don't know, it bothered me, and we heard very little of him. And I really wish I did have time to prepare for a game, because what I wanted to do, and it wouldn't have worked for you guys, we would have to get somebody who hadn't seen the trailer, is play some different Chris Pratt animations that he's done before and see if you could tell which one is from the Mario trailer, because... and I did cut some of his, this is all the dialogue he has in the thing I have here for him.
Okay.
All right. Let's go. Oh, I got this. No problem.
A lot of he does is grunts and moans and
It's just It's Andy Dwyer from The Office doing a Mario impression, or Parks and Rec, whatever he was on. Yeah.
Okay, I got to say, it doesn't sound as good without the animation to accompany it.
Again, I think he probably got the job when he was hotter, and he's kind of, except for Jurassic World, which seems to be hanging on, his star is not as bright as it was a few years ago.
Yeah, I'm not really down on it, though. I expect once I get in the theater and I start watching it, that's going to fade away. Yeah. Because I'm not paying attention to that voice is bothering me, unless it's really leaping out at me, and it kind of isn't. I think it'll grow on us, I expect.
I'm excited for the movie. It looks like a great adventure, colorful and fun. Like, I really enjoy those types of animation films for the most part.
What happened, Kat?
That's entertaining yourself.
I just imagine John going in the theater waiting for the part with the fart.
It's never coming.
Where's the fart from the trailer?
All right. Hey, another 1980s news. And speaking of adventures, I want to talk about the new Willow series. I guess, first of all, it's been out since it opened. Kat's still getting herself together? She's still picturing you in an empty theater or the lights dimming, and 90 minutes later. Finally. Finally, John gets some relief because that scene appears. I feel so much better now that I've seen the scene I was waiting for.
Okay. I'm going to try now.
Well, we'll just continue. We'll just have a track of you laughing behind us.
How is that different?
Kat wasn't available today to record, so we just have this track of her giggling behind us for an hour now.
From last week's episode. Just trying to get this show done.
I'm giving me
to do.
I'm getting a big ab workout here. Unintentional workout. Okay.
I wanted to ask you guys if I don't know how this is getting cut together. Maybe this is all in. Whatever. So Willow opened or premiered on Disney Plus November 30th. Have you seen any of it? Did you watch any of it yet?
No.
Okay.
Because that was just yesterday.
Haven't yet.
I did watch the first episode. And, I look forward to watching the second episode. I'll say that much.
Great. Okay. All right.
But so without any spoilers, we could touch, maybe with a minor spoiler, we could touch base on a couple of updates with regard, behind the scenes updates with regard to the show, including the fact that we touched on this a little bit a few months ago when we were talking about anticipating the show coming out. Some news was coming out about the making of it. At that time, we discussed that Val Kilmer is not in the series, but we learned that he wasn't written out of the plot until essentially they were set to produce. So he was intended to be there until the last very moment.
Wow. Yeah.
Of course, Val Kilmer played Mad Mardigan in the original 1988 film. Now, that said, he still remains an important presence in the new series with showrunner Jonathan Kasdan desperately wanted him to be a part of the show. Kilmer wanted to be in it. But he was struggling with his health prior to it because he had a bout with throat cancer.
Yeah.
Yep.
And even though he reprised his role as Iceman in Top Gun, it was a brief scene where he typed most of his dialogue. And so even after that, Kasdan said Kilmer was still up for anything. So it wasn't until COVID struck that finally Kilmer said, you know what, I don't think I should participate. And you can't blame the guy. I mean, little was known about it at the time, and he had some, what do they call those, comorbidities.
Yes.
That made the illness more life-threatening to him. So at the last moment, they're rewriting the script to cut his character, at least from seeing his character out of the show. But he is so important to the story that his presence is still felt. I mean, his kids are the leads of the story. That's who we follow.
So that's what I was about to ask you, having seen the first episode, is knowing what we know about how he was, written out, not written out with malice, but written out because of such conditions, whether or not they phased him away, but he's actually still very much central to the story.
Yes. Oh yeah.
That's cool. Awesome.
That's
great. It's great. And again, no spoilers, but obviously he's mentioned a lot, and his presence looms large over the lives of these characters and how they were impacted by it.
Nice.
And with regard to having to rework the script and the story, Kasdan said he had to, quote, figure out a way to preserve the story we wanted to tell with him. We've tried to do that and work with him in a way that he is felt and heard, if not seen.
Okay.
End quote. Now, I thought that is, if not seen, does that mean we're going to have some kind of visual trickery or I don't know. I haven't seen anything like that, but.
Oh. I just took it to mean.
Since he's not going to be seen,
more of a since. Yeah.
I agree. It could be that way. Yeah. Well, either way, the show so far, I'm enjoying it. So.
That's great.
And there's
it doesn't mean he can't ever be in it, right?
Right.
Maybe.
In fact, Kazan, while they've only wrapped on season 1, Kazan's hopeful if they get a second season, Kilmer will be able to join them then. Mm-hmm. In addition to that bit of it behind the scenes information, there's Kazan also spoke to Polygon in a recent interview and to talk about the development of the show. And there's 2 points I want to highlight. There's a whole lot of cool stuff he said in there, in particular about how influential 1980s movies were on him. Now you got to remember, Jonathan Kasdan is the son of Lawrence Kasdan, famed screenwriter who most importantly wrote Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Empire Strikes Back. Now, he wrote and co-wrote and participated in writing in a whole bunch of other films that we love throughout the 1980s and since. But anyway, so there you go. So you know where he's coming from. You could check out that interview. But first, and only a minor spoiler that he talks about is how one of the female characters is wrestling with whether she's in love with her female best friend. And so front and center is this queer romance. And I can hear already they're woke. First of all, how did woke become a bad thing? I mean,
how?
I was up at the Walmart and I heard about the wokeification of Willer.
Willer. Welcome to Walmart.
I was gonna watch Willer on the Netflix, and then I heard it was queer.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the interviewer asked him how that came about and whether he received pushback from the studio, and Kasdan said that there was no pushback.
Wonderful.
And quote, hopefully the way that it's going to happen is that these kind of stories that are just organic to the narrative we're telling find their way in, and it becomes less of a surprising and unusual thing to see, end quote. And that's what it seems like. I mean, it's this minor spoiler because very early on you get the vibe of what's going on,
Oh, even with just the first episode.
Yes, within the first few minutes you're like, that was an interesting glance. And then before the episode's over, you kind of...
Did you know about this little tidbit, this information before watching? Or after?
I might have read the news story already, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't think I would have made a difference.
To get briefly on my soapbox, I will say, love is love, and I can't wait until this kind of story is not a story.
Yeah,
right.
What does it matter? I think back to like in the 60s and 70s when there's an interracial romance in something, and that was a big deal,
right?
And now that's not a story anymore,
right? Yeah,
that's just people that care for each other. How they care for each other and how they orient themselves is entirely up to them. Just tell me the story and don't categorize that as like breaking news.
Right.
Okay. Breaking news. Human beings care for one another. Damn, that is odd. Right. Yeah. It shouldn't matter. So
it shouldn't
off my soapbox.
Yes. No, get back on that soapbox,
John.
You look much taller up there. 5'8" now.
It's a short soapbox. It's only one bar of soap in it.
One bar.
Yeah, I agree, John, 100%. I don't even have to I just agree, and that's the end of that. Yeah.
Here.
Who cares? It's going to get too political if I start talking about it, but it's just like, I don't even understand why you care.
Right.
No one's making you do anything. All right. Well, there's another interesting point that, so thinking about like to John's point, how far we've come, even since the 1980s, we didn't have a whole lot of this kind of storytelling that, again, wasn't breaking news. But he said an interesting thing that made me think, well, maybe there's some elements of 80s storytelling that are important today, but maybe it's actually, now that I say that out loud, maybe it's something else that needs to change. Anyway, I'll tell you what it is. Another interesting point, again, but before that, I had to consider. But first, this message from Del Monte. Another interesting point that I hadn't considered. The interview notes her appreciation for how 80s fantasy movies, they were willing, let's say, to let kids be scared.
Yes.
And Kasdan talks about how the most dramatic movie moment for him is still resonating with him today is the scene from The Never Ending Story when Atreyu's trying to rescue his horse being sucked down into that mud.
Too soon.
He thinks that maybe that it's important to have those types of experiences when you're younger. And he says, quote, "It's so critical to my matriculation and education as a storyteller and as an imaginative human being was that these movies had this stuff in that was really sort of disturbing and stuck with you for their whole life." how it formed the iconography of good and evil for you. End quote.
One of the reasons I think Generation X people grew up to be such well-rounded adults is because we were prepared for that. You know, everything didn't have pool noodles cut around them. So that, no, there were sharp edges. There were things we could bump into. And so imagine Never-Ending Story, right? You're like, that was heartbreaking. That was wrenching. But ultimately there were no stakes. But now you've had a sample of what grief and loss is. So when you experience it in real life, you're not hit like a truck because you're like, I know what this feeling is. I get it. I've had some time to, it's almost like you've had an inoculation against grief because you know how to deal with it on a small scale. So when it comes for real, I agree.
That's an interesting way of putting it. Yeah. And what he points out, and then you make me think that this is, the way you worded it reminds me of something. He says that he's worried that today's youth, they're bombarded with so much content that they may not be impacted by any one particular moment or another.
Sure.
And I will add to that the fact that I learned that how using electronics, if you're constantly when you're using electronics, your brain does not have the opportunity to process grief, emotions, memories, etc., in a way that it does. And so the amount of electronics that kids are on, I sound like a bunch of old people now. So you not only don't have these singular experiences anymore before you're on to the next thing, but then you don't even have a moment to process what you had experienced to benefit from that so-called inoculation.
Or channel it into something creative, like doing a story about something with your friends.
Right.
Or some artwork or whatever, writing something on your own. Yeah.
So I recommend the show, and I look forward to talking with you guys when you eventually see it. It's only got 2 episodes out so far.
Okay.
All right. Hey, and finally in 1980s news, and boy, oh boy, this is hot and fresh breaking news. It just came out literally right before we recorded the show. Anyway.
Yes.
I felt like Steve Martin in The Jerk, the phone book's here. The phone book's here.
He hates these cans.
The trailer for the Indiana Jones, the trailer for Indiana Jones and The Dial of Destiny, which I think they got to work on that name. Doesn't our generation feature
a rotary phone?
Yeah.
All I could think of was, I bet the Dial of Destiny goes to 11.
See, another Gen X reference. Yes.
Yeah.
And now I pictured a bar of soap, the Dial of Destiny. The guy slips on it and falls down in his tub. Changes his life forever.
Hip. Oh, my hip.
That's Indy.
Marion.
And Shia LaBeouf comes in. He's like, not you. No, get your mother. Anyway, so
Don't look at me.
The trailer dropped. Did you guys get a chance to watch it? So hot and fresh.
Ask me how many times I watched.
Ooh, how many times did you watch it, John?
4 times.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I watched it about 3-4 times too.
Yeah.
I tried to watch it more than 2, but I kept getting interrupted.
There's a fair amount to unpack.
You're a kind person, Kat, because this is exactly what happened in my house. I watched it. My daughter was doing her homework, but she's not asking me homework questions. She's asking me about something else. Dad, I pause it. Yeah. He asked me a question. Okay, honey. I rewind it, start playing again. Hey, Dad, honey, what is it? Okay, another thing. But third time I said,
shut up. Daddy's watching the trailer.
That's what I did. The third time I said, all right, honey, Daddy's watching a trailer he's been waiting for years to come out. It's been 15 years since the last movie. She was
Since
like,
the last bad movie.
I love you, honey. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna watch
do
the
shut
show,
up.
I know. Anyway, yeah, but just shut up.
So when I started watching, I had a little one that I kid sit here, and she kept chatting and chatting and chatting, and I just kept turning the volume up.
Oh no!
And then she finally came over and she's, ooh,
I can't hear
and she
you.
said, I want to
watched
watch
it?
this with you. So then my first
that's
viewing,
good.
it was, and I said there might be some kind of scary parts, and she said, oh, I like this.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, a couple of images in there were, ooh, little startling. So it was all good.
So what did you think?
So excited.
I'm optimistic. I'm not wowed. I'm not wowed yet.
You weren't wowed?
It felt like a teaser trailer. There weren't really many story beats, but the action looked fun.
Yeah.
And I thought the de-aging, what we saw of it,
Holy
looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't see it and go, like you get that uncanny valley thing.
No,
Now,
Right,
granted, we
right.
didn't see him talking or doing anything in any of those de-aged, blasts that went by in a microsecond. But
Yeah,
at a
yeah,
glance, I'm like, even though I knew there was de-aging in it, and I went,
Right.
did they have old footage of him? Oh, wait, no, I know better. Like, it really looked good.
Yes. Yeah. Now, and it's just that quick glance. It wasn't long bits, but ooh, I was very impressed.
Yeah, there's a couple of kind of janky special effects I caught in there, but maybe it's just trailer level. They haven't. We know there's a huge problem in the special effects industry right now where they have a real backlog of work, and they're being overworked and underpaid, and so some stuff's not getting done or getting done last minute or done poorly. But I agree with you, John. Overwhelmingly, there's a couple moments in there where it's just shocking how well it's done. Indiana Jones. Harrison Ford himself said it's the first time he thinks its de-aging has worked.
Right. Yeah. And if he says it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to steal this thunder from you, Will, because you've always commented
Please,
already
go right ahead.
in this show. The best part of the trailer.
Ooh, I want to hear what you
part.
think the best part is, because I have a favorite. I have a best part too.
Oh, well, Will kind of already, he kind of tipped his hand. I know what he thinks is the best part of the trailer. So
What-
go
No,
ahead, talk about it. Lay it on
Go
us.
ahead.
It's the absolute triple fortissimo hit of the Indiana Jones theme.
I got chills just you saying that. Yeah.
Ba-da-ba. There's like a motorcycle leaping through. I'm like, holy
nice.
crap, it just became Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
That moment. That was the only thing that gave me chills, but that moment definitely gave me chills. The first 2 times I watched it, I got chills.
And I even like how they made you wait for it. They had they had like a slow down, just like a plunky piano version of it.
Yes.
You could almost not recognize it, but you knew it in your sort of subconscious that was happening.
Yep.
And then they hit it with you, and I was like, oh, I got chills again just now talking about it. Again, it's the 3rd or 4th time.
That's great.
And John, you said you watched it 4 times. I watched it 3 or 4 times just to get to that moment again, like to experience
Just to
that.
get there. Yeah. And I couldn't tell you the next 3 shots after that because I'm busy going, yeah. I'm like, oh, rewind.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear my favorite part?
Oh, yeah. What's your favorite?
Absolutely.
At the end, with the tables turning on.
Yes.
Should I say this? Like, is it a spoiler
it's a
for the
trailer.
trailer?
It's in the trailer. Go for it.
So Indy's doing this crazy whip thing, right? And then all of a sudden, all these guns get pulled out and pointed at him,
Right.
right? And we, like from the first one where the guy with what did he have? Swords or something? And
Yeah, he had a big
when
sword.
Indy just pulls out a gun. I was like, oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
It was
I
funny.
loved that.
You said, John, it's not a lot of story. It seemed like maybe just some footage. And it reminds me that I think this is almost exactly what was described as being shown at D23, which wasn't quite a trailer, was more like a sizzle reel. But a lot of these scenes, the running on the train, I think that even that moment with the turning of the tables that Kat just described.
It might have even been people talking about that they had seen an early screening, but almost shot for shot, the things we saw, there's a foot race on the train. Yep. There's a plane thing. Yeah. There's some underwater stuff. I'm like, these are exactly the scenes that are in the trailer. That's all you knuckleheads saw.
Yes, I agree, John. And speaking of Overlord DVD, which we shouldn't even name this person anymore. What you just said is just another thing that shows that he's wrong. He was wrong. And along those lines, I will remind folks that as early as I want to say it was like April of 2021, and then again in October of 2021, he went to tell folks that his sources had told him that time travel was involved. And he told this elaborate story that was from a leaked script where the old and young Indiana Jones would join forces to fight the bad guys together. And ultimately, they both get killed, and that's why Phoebe Waller-Bridge takes over. But now we can definitively say, once again, this guy, Overlord DVD, is wrong. Because we now know, according to the most recent Empire magazine, which focuses on the new film, the film's opening is set in 1944, about 8 years after the events in Raiders took place. And that is why Harrison Ford is de-aged to look like a young Indiana Jones. And by the way, John, you're right. They did use a combination of old footage and some other film trickery to create the illusion of him being younger.
Awesome.
And they had, I don't know if Harrison Ford was wearing it or a double, but they used the original jacket from the first film to do it.
They have to go get that out of the Smithsonian.
Oh, yeah, you're
that's
right.
stored.
Right. It just crumbles, falls to dust. They're like, we'll just buy another one and tell them it was all right.
That's right. It's the original, I swear.
Yeah. Why'd you say Universal Studios on? God damn it. But
2022.
After that sequence in the 40s, the film leaps forward to 1969 with Indiana Jones at his current age, and that's where most of the film takes place. So wrong, he's wrong. But I especially like the reason why Mangold even did this, because James Mangold, the director, explained that he wanted the chance to dive into the film the way, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg opened the original films. I mean, Lawrence Kasdan, the way he wrote it, it's, you think about the original Raiders of the Lost Ark. I don't know if it was Kasdan or Sid Field who, originally created this sort of format for screenplaying, but the idea that the first 10 minutes, you just, boom, it's this combination of exposition and by your, seat of your pants action to really suck people in. And Mangold wanted to do it just like they did in those early films. And that's why he set it at the time period where the character, was of that age of those same first couple movies. He was an adventurer still at that point. He was still in his prime and doing that then. Yeah, I always call that the James Bond open. It's this great James Bond films that absolutely hit you in the gut with an action sequence, and Indiana Jones films, good ones, I'll point out, good Indiana Jones films also start that way. Not naming any names. Crystal Skull. Yeah, we know. But with regard to the de-aging of Harrison Ford, their hope, producer Kathleen Kennedy added, was that audiences would watch the opening and think, quote, "Oh my God, they just found footage." End quote. It's working. Yep. So we got to wait until June of next year for that to come out, unfortunately. But I will be there.
Oh yeah.
This is for Overlord. Sorry, buddy. Sorry, buddy.
It wasn't for you, John.
Wow.
Unless you're him.
I'm not. Then you talk like an idiot. Not as far as you know.
All right. And that was the news. Hey, our independent podcast is brought to you every week by folks just like you. So if you'd like to help us out, please follow us on the podcast platform you're listening to right now. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Share an episode on Facebook. All of these actions just take a moment and are 100% free. But if you'd like to chuck in a buck and help us keep publishing the show week after week, please visit us at 1980snow.com/support to find out how you can send us $1 or $2. And thank you so much. It means a lot. All right, so hey, in a moment, as we talked about, we're going to...
Pretty
sneaky, sis.
Yes, I was gonna say sis. I'm like, oh, that doesn't work. You guys,
I don't think that's a Pressman Toy game, though. But
no, it's not. Sorry.
That's okay. Oh. Jim and Donna will forgive us. But anyway, speaking of Jim and Donna, we're going to speak with Jim and Donna in just a couple minutes here. But I wanted to touch base with you guys with the role, how board games, the role they played maybe in your life growing up and today.
Yeah.
And for folks who you think they're not familiar with Pressman Toys, let me just run this down quickly because this is only what happened in the 80s.
Yeah. Oh, you are familiar. You just don't know it yet.
Yeah, you don't realize. I'll throw a couple other things in here too.
Okay.
The reason why you play Chinese checkers is because of the Pressman.
Yes.
Rummy Cube, Pressman.
Yep.
Mastermind. Oh, I love Mastermind.
Yes. I was digging around in my closet before recording, and I found
you did?
Mastermind. Yep.
Also known as the original Wordle.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Tri-Ominoes. Remember those?
I haven't played it, but I've seen it. Yeah.
And I'm talking about stuff that happened. Well, let's see. Mastermind. Everything except for the Chinese checkers reference happened when Jim, who we're going to be speaking to in a few minutes, was running the company. He licensed more than a dozen TV game shows, including Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. He would go on to do Millionaire and of other more contemporary.
Didn't Pressman also do the domino rally, like the domino, plastic domino sets?
I so wanted that. That had a crazy commercial that made you feel like you could do anything with dominoes.
So I had a good friend that lives across the street from me.
Yeah.
And he was fortunate enough to have divorced parents. Therefore, he got lots of toys. They competed.
Okay.
Every time his dad came to visit, he came with a bag full of toys for him.
I can
and I'm
attest to that, yes.
You lucky guy with divorced parents. Yeah,
Wow.
Anyway, my stupid parents love each other. Anyway, but he had Domino Rally, and he had the Star Wars figures, and he had Domino Rally. And I went across the street to play with those things at his house. And some of them had the pieces of track that the dominoes are attached, and you flip them up, and it's a shortcut. And there are templates to stack the dominoes. It was so cool. Anyway, that was Pressman too.
Yeah. I didn't even know how that worked. That's how that worked. Those little the things like you're talking about with the track. That
It was
I wanted
so
that.
neat.
Yeah.
You got to get you some. You got to get you some.
I'm reading their book, which is a fantastic book, by the way. I immediately was also on eBay looking for it. Look, some of these games you could still get.
I bet.
But I was like, I want a vintage Domino Rally. I want a vintage Space Creatures. I want a vintage Magic World of Blackstone Magic set. Because my parents didn't get it for me, even though they should have gotten divorced.
Oh no!
Stupid happy parents.
Topple. You guys remember Topple? That it looked like a tree.
Oh, the balancing on the.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Anyway, tons of ones. Let's go fishing. With the fish would go around a little motorized plate, and you have to catch.
No way.
Now they're opening and closing their mouth.
They did that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it's like the carnival game,
loved that.
right? The one that's rigged against you.
And what's cool about the book is they tell a lot of the stories of how these came to be, and a lot of them are licensing from other companies. A lot of them are working with other companies that were also small families like themselves. It was a big look. They're a huge company now, and when early on when Jim started running the company in '78 with Triominoes, they made $6 million that year.
Wow.
And they did a little presentation where they invited him to the front of the conference or it was marketing meeting, I think, and they gave him a $6 million
action figure.
Oh,
wow.
sweet.
But by 1989, they made $80 million in sales. So this is under Jim's first 10 years.
That's a lot of action figures to add up to that amount.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess what role did games play in your lives as kids? Did you play a lot of board games? John talked about Domino Rally. Did you play games as a kid, Kat?
Yes. I loved playing Chinese checkers with my grandfather.
Oh, me too.
And we did dominoes, just regular old dominoes. That was a favorite. I can't say I've played the exciting variations that you guys have been mentioning here, but I'm certainly interested.
And whatever. Yeah.
Right.
They had quad dominoes, I think, later on. Yeah.
But I had a lot of the non-Pressman games were a part of my life as well. I don't really want to talk about those, but certainly I.
There you go.
It was of no fault of my own. I through no fault of my own. Just what was
I think
around.
the Pressmans will understand.
I hope they would.
They might.
Yeah.
But yes, board games, I love them, and they were an important part of my life. And it was really cool to hear how, because I never thought about where did these come from, who made these. So,
Did you guys still play board games in your households now? I know John said he still got some Pressman games, right?
I do for sure. We have stacks and stacks of them. I have a closet full of board games. In our dining room, we have the on-deck stack that has been pulled from the closet because they're currently in rotation. And then we have the ones actually on the dining table that are in active play. So we have board games all over the house. We don't play them as often as we would like to because we're very busy, but they're out. So you can grab one and jump in and play. Yeah.
Well, I need to come to your house because we have a lot of board games and I have no one to play with.
Oh.
Yeah. My kids weren't really all that interested in them, or they'd want to play them in ways that weren't really how you're meant to play them.
Yes.
Who raised your kids? Clearly didn't raise them right.
That's where I went wrong.
I see. The board game. Everything else, perfect.
Everything
Just the
else
board
is
game
pretty good. Yeah.
We have a closet full, like you're saying, John, and it got to a point where recently I was like, I think I need to build shelves like in the basement or somewhere else because they just can't fit in here. And it's a pretty big closet. But like you, the games that we're playing currently usually wind up just on a stack outside the closet on the floor, which isn't the best presentation. But
you could build a little shelf right there outside the door.
Yeah. It is kind of fascinating how, in spite of how many options we have now, streaming services, video games, apps, on our phones, all these kind of things, that we still, not only that we have an interest in playing board games with our families at all, that they're still making like hundreds and hundreds of new games are being made.
Yep.
I've gone to, I don't know, John, you ever go to Gen Con or what's the other one? The one we have in Ohio. Gen Con's in Indiana. Anyway, there's a big gaming convention every year.
Big gaming convention. Well, I go to the Southern Fried Gaming Expo every year.
Okay.
And they have a huge board gaming section. It's enormous. Oh, yeah. You can check out games and bring them to the table. And this is a convention that's full of old arcade machines and pinball machines and old computers. And they have probably a third of the convention is board games.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, Origins
Oh my
Game Fair
gosh.
is the big one. That's I think Origins and Gen Con are the ones. It's pretty much all it is board games, RPG games for the most part, and the different stuff. Hey, speaking of board games, because we still purchase them like mad here. If you're looking for the perfect gift for the gamer in your life, I want to recommend to you the only place you need to shop for all your gaming needs, Recess Games.
Okay.
Which you can find their online store at recess.net. And, much like Jim and Donna, we're going to talk to in a little bit, this is a family operation. For over 30 years, Recess Games has been owned and operated by avid gamers, Susan and James. Yeah, the passion that they have for gaming is clear in every aspect of their physical and online stores. It's when you go to, if you're fortunate enough to live in Northeast Ohio like I am, when you go there, it is like the feeling you get walking into a Toys R Us when you were a kid. I mean, it's that kind of joy.
Cool.
You want to just run from shelf to shelf and table to table and try everything out. But the fortunate thing for folks who don't live in Northeast Ohio is they have a fantastic online store with an immense catalog of products, and you could search it by name, sure, just like any other place. But, and this is how you know these folks are really into games, you can also search by gaming mechanics.
Oh.
You know, how the game is played.
Oh,
right?
wow.
Dice and spinners and meeples and cards and whatever,
Meeples?
right? Yeah.
What's a meatball?
Big Cat's not
Meeples.
as much into gaming as we are.
Did you say meeples or meatballs?
Meeples.
Meeples.
Meeples. Like peoples, but with a meeple.
Are there any games you play with meatballs?
I'm hungry.
Now I want to know. No, I'm gonna.
And is
I'm
it
check.
hungry hippos with meatballs?
Oh.
There's marbles.
And
That's
are we the
marbles, not
hippos?
meeples. Yeah.
Well, look, I don't know.
Yes.
You're not going to find any meatball games, I don't think, Kat, at least with real meatballs. But there's probably one with fake meatballs. But you can search recess.net by whether it's a resource building game, a family game, a historical war game, a bluffing game, which I suck at those games, by the way. I am not comfortable
bluffing
lying in
game?
real life. Yeah, you have to lie. Like a werewolf. You have to pretend you're not who you are or try to convince somebody you're somebody else. I am not good at those games, and I do not feel comfortable doing it.
I'm actually, I'm a little embarrassed to say that I'm really good at those games.
Oh, that is
It
shocking.
doesn't make any sense to me, but
Anyway, it's also not games and puzzles. They sell all manner of gaming accoutrement.
oh,
The stuff that
Fancy.
enhances the gaming experience. Miniatures, paints to paint the miniatures, dice. You can never have too many dice, especially if you play a role-playing game. And I've got too many dice. And while they've got the most well-known popular titles like Catan and so on and so forth, they also have tons of, like we're talking about, independent games. In fact, one real cool thing about Recess is they back Kickstarter projects for many in development games. So don't take my word for it. Go and do it. You need to find a game seriously. Go to recess.net, click on shop, and find your next game at Recess Games. All right. Hey, we'll be back in just a moment with our guests today, Jim and Donna Pressman. Our guest today is the son of Jack Pressman, who in 1922 started what would become Pressman Toy, makers of the popular games Rummikub, Triominoes, and many, many more. Well, following Jack's passing in 1959, his wife, Lynn, became one of the first female CEOs in the industry when she assumed control of the company. And nearly 20 years later, as the 1980s neared, Lynn promoted our guest to president of Pressman. And even though our guest originally had no interest in running the family business, the company's success boomed under his leadership. Today, our guest and his wife have published A Century of American Toys and Games, The Story of Pressman Toy, How One Family Shaped the Way We Play. It's a fascinating chronology of the Pressman products that have brought joy to millions of families over the last 100 years. You can find it wherever books are sold. Please welcome to the show, Jim and Donna Pressman. Hey, guys.
Hey, great to be here.
It is
hello and welcome.
Hi.
Hey, Kat.
I'm going to confess to you guys, we had a technological scare right before we got on with you. And I was thinking, you don't have those problems in the good old days, when we just had to rely on board games and not technology. But then I just realized I would miss, I'd be missing a chess piece or a checkers piece or something. And we'd have to, use a quarter or a penny or whatever.
A rock. Yeah.
Well, good news and bad news about the technology today.
Yeah.
Yes.
So appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. Of course, we're speaking with you on the 100th anniversary of Pressman Toy, and you've got a wonderful book that just came out, A Century of American Toys and Games, The Story of Pressman Toy. How, and I love this little subtitle here, How One Family Shaped the Way We Play. And it's really, for folks, look, if you're into games, it's a great book. But if you're into history, it's a great book. If you're into, really, it's just an American story, you know, it's one of those classic tales,
Yeah, no, it is. An immigrant,
There's
family
many stories here.
comes into America, starts with a little shop, in Harlem, New York, toys and sporting goods. And 100 years later, we're one of the, great game companies in the world.
Yes.
Wow.
And even the aspect of your father having gone off to war and coming back to start a company. I mean, again, it's just what we, the promise of America, I suppose, that we've.
Well, when my wife and I did the research, we knew a lot about my mother's period, which started in the mid 40s until, the 70s. But Jack and his history was really unknown to us until we dove into some archives in Rochester at the Strong Museum and the Children's Museum. And we found out a gold mine of things that we just never knew about the beginning of the company.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious about that because, there's so much in there and so many stories, so many photos, so many ads.
Yes.
What is the undertaking? Is this something that's pieced together slowly over years?
Yeah. Well, it took 3 years.
It took us 3 years, but the part I loved so much was that we were both excited, but actually to see Jimmy's excitement every time we would come upon a new ad or something about his dad,
Yeah. I mean, we just never dawned on us.
We had no idea.
Yeah. I mean, when Jack was starting the company, we found the ads that were, buy playthings for, 25 cents.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
But then when my mother got into it and started to get involved, the ads got much more playful, much more teasing kind of ads. And it was a joy to see them. My mother was flamboyant, and she was one of the first women in the 50s, or when my father died in 1959 and 1960 to run a toy company or any company. So it was all, pretty amazing.
So it was a real discovery process in the writing of this book. That's amazing.
Yeah. No, it was totally revealing.
But like Jimmy said the other day, which is very true, the book sort of wrote itself.
Okay.
It did. Once we found the history, we just repeated it.
We just were able to connect the dots, puzzle pieces together, and it came together seamlessly, sort of.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I kind of imagine, and we could do a whole thing of just about your mom's role there, because again, that's a pretty fantastic story. Thinking about how, so, a lot of the stuff you said you learned about your father just by research, did you not know of it because of how the culture was then? It was such a bigger separation between, let's say, what the adults did and the children did, or was it just by nature of your youth?
Yeah. I mean, my father, obviously, when he started the company, none of us were around in 1922. And I was, very young. I was 10 years old when my father passed away. And towards the end of his life, in those days, heart disease was much more formidable than it is today.
Sure.
And my mother started running the business with him, and then basically running the business 4 or 5 years before he passed. So I have, vague memories of seeing him in the office with my mother, but most of my knowledge of the business when I was a kid came during my mother's years.
And I imagine this is just my fantasy. I imagine your youth much being like the child of Willy Wonka, where you have access to this wonderful factory.
I mean, I did love going to the showroom and just playing with whatever I had, there on the floor, knock hockey, peg tables. So that was fun. I mean, it's definitely more fun growing up with a family that is in this business than it would be, a shoemaker or.
There are a number of pictures of Jimmy in the showroom. I mean, in the catalog
Yes.
and on the cover. Someone had asked him the other night if he remembered doing that. And what he really remembers is going into the showroom and playing, but he doesn't remember the pictures being taken or anything. But he actually made the cover of which year?
1955.
1955. And I don't think he knew it.
Right.
But anyway,
You found that.
So it's really genuine.
Yeah.
You weren't faking it.
Yeah,
Pure joy.
that picture's in the book if you want to see it. Was it like, I just tend to think about, look, my parents, when I was growing up, I don't know what they did. Maybe they told me the title. I don't think they even told me that. So I had no idea what they did. But was it growing up in your household where did games play an important role at home as well?
Well, I mean, the business did. I mean, I do remember coming home and my mother would be in bed with papers thrown all over her bed, working. And I remember going out, for dinners with the family when I was a kid, and they would just talk business. And I would say, well, let's talk about something else for a while. And a minute, then got back to
and then
business.
he went right back to business.
Right. I do have those memories of, growing up in the business.
Well, it shows certainly at least a passion for it. I mean, a love for the work that your family had for it.
Yeah, no, hey,
right.
When it's a family, it was definitely, I mean, peripherally, my brother, my sister, my cousins, there was a lot of family and extended family that were involved in the business over the years. And my mother came with a family with 5 sisters and a brother. And to some degree or less, more or less, almost every one of them had some relative that was part of the business at some point.
Did you we know, spoiler alert, folks, ultimately you're running the company, certainly for at least 40 years, and you're working with the company for longer than that.
Right. Right. The interesting fact is my father was president for 37 years, and then I was president for 37 years.
Oh.
Yeah.
Neat. Yeah.
So, but I'm going to pretend like I didn't read the book. Was it always your dream to one day run the family business?
Absolutely not. Like many people, absolutely no idea what I was going to do. Yep. My brother was a philosophy major, so I tried philosophy for one semester. I didn't understand a thing they said. And later in life, it helped me write instructions, I think. But out of college, my brother said, why don't you go to work for the company, the toy company? Whatever you do in life, it will help you get a background for business and negotiation. Mm-hmm. And so I did that. Mm-hmm. And at first I said, okay, I'll give it a few years, or a couple of years or whatever. And, 1 year led into the next, into the next, into the next. And then it hooked me, I guess, like a lot of get hooked.
His mother began to rely on him, with the factory. You could talk about that and the school products. Yeah.
Right. Well, that was the changeover. I mean, I started working in the factory and doing some educational sales to schools. And then my mother gave me the job of selling some educational products to school systems around New York and nationally around the country. So I did a little traveling. But eventually, you start to learn the factory, and then you learn the mechanics of everything. And then you started to sit in on product meetings, and you start to build a knowledge of what you think, will help build the company.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to say, so, I'm 51 years old right now. I still don't feel like an adult, which may be a product of my generation, which, it's got this Peter Pan syndrome of some kind, but I can't imagine being at your age in 1977,
right,
having this responsibility thrust on you to take over the company. Did you feel a tremendous amount of pressure based on the legacy of it at that point?
That I don't know how this sounds, but I never felt pressure.
That's good.
Mother, I don't think ever expected me to run the business. Mm-hmm. And consequently, I just never had that issue. I just was doing what I was doing.
Right.
And when she saw that I moved the factory successfully with help from a lot of people. She felt I knew enough to make me president of the company. And I took it on. And shortly thereafter, she hired this marketing fellow who I talk about in the book, Shelley Greenberg. Right. And I had a lot of ideas, but he helped me reinforce belief in myself that these ideas were right. I had a lot of ideas, but I didn't know, hey, maybe this is but we both thought a lot alike. And together, we changed the direction of the company from being a toy company into a game company.
Right. It seems like, the stories that you share in the book, it seems like the two of you together really gelled in such a way that was able to, sort of lightning in a bottle, how things took off.
You're exactly right. I get chills thinking, because it was a perfect marriage. Yeah. He had other interests. He was just a consultant kind of, but the time we spent together was invaluable.
Right.
Yeah.
And look, you took over, we didn't know this until so I read the book. You're responsible for so many of the games that we played, in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And that's our era of our youth. Had so many of these boxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In fact, I was at my mom's house a couple of days ago and I told her I was going to talk to you. And she said, hang on a second. She went out in a room. She came out. She still has our Chinese checkers and our mastermind.
Oh my!
Yep.
She didn't have the box for the Chinese checkers. I was disappointed, but she had mastermind still. But yeah, in maybe unfortunately, although maybe it doesn't matter, that as kids certainly we don't realize that there's one company that's responsible for so many of the games that we loved. It's
you know Rummikub, but you don't know who makes it.
Right.
Domino, don't know who does it, and hopefully this brings a little attention to the fact that there's a Pressman toy company. So,
well, I'm so happy to know about this because, and I have your father to thank for this, apparently, your father, Jack, for popularizing Chinese checkers.
Yes.
That is a beloved game for me. It's like an indelible memory for me of playing that with my grandfather. That was our thing that we would do together on lazy summer afternoons. And so thank you to your dad.
Who used to win between you and your grandfather?
I think it was pretty evenly divided. At least that's how I would try to remember it. Yeah.
So at the end of a long day when you decompress, have you had your fill of board games by then? Or do you find that you find other ways to unwind because you're like just anything but a board game right now? Or is that you find it's still integrated into your leisure?
No, we find other things. I mean, during COVID, it was great together and playing Rummikub and some of these other games. We had
Rummikub tournaments.
Right.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Other things. Yeah, but it is integrated into our life.
Yeah.
But not in a crazy way.
Right.
Yeah.
Played a fair bit of Uno over the years. Not our game.
Plug for the Uno folks. Yeah, and I was telling them earlier, but just hit after hit. So many things. And actually, I should say, I mentioned this to these guys earlier. In the 70s, the monster makeup, I wanted that. Oh, the magic of Harry, World of Blackstone. I wanted that. These are the things I coveted for Christmases. Wow. Never got, Jim.
Oh, you never got them. No. Oh, man.
But I love that in the 1980s, the slogan, to get to your point of an element of what we're talking about, that the tagline was games people play together. Because so many of our memories are about certainly the games, but it's like Kat was pointing out, it's the person that we were playing with. I remember playing, playing Rummikub with my sister when we were homesick from school, while The Price is Right was on in the background or something. And how, even the stories in the book are fantastic about how you relied eventually on your daughter as a sort of inspiration for what games children might be interested in. And by the way, we've got at least 2 of those Scooby-Doo games still that we play. Mine one and the Mansion one. Oh, fantastic.
Ooh.
The license lasted 15 years, I think we were doing Scooby-Doo games. And it was all because Kate, was at the age she was watching Scooby. I looked into the ratings and everything, and it was on, 28 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah.
Doing anything with the license. So we went to Warner Brothers, got the license, for a very minimal amount. And it was one of the best licenses we ever had.
Wow.
There's so many successes in the book. I mean, it's really kind of unbelievable. The stories in here, how just by happenstance, in some instances, you just was just like Nickelodeon, you know, that story about Nickelodeon, how you got Double Dare and
Yeah.
Was there
I love
any,
that.
were there any that got away, some license that you coveted, but you just?
Good question. Nothing that rings that comes to mind.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some deals that fell through when we were looking at buying some companies. And I always said some of the best deals we never made, you know, were the ones we never made. And obviously there were some licenses we got where we paid some money for that didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But, you know, they say if you hit 300, you go into the Hall of Fame and, you know.
He's there.
And he's there. And his dad's there. It's just amazing.
Yep. That's
Exactly.
great.
As you saw in the 1980s, because you came in the late 70s, just when home video game consoles were also starting to become popular. You know, Atari VCS was out in 78, I think.
Mm-hmm.
They
Right.
only became more and more household items as they became affordable and there's more companies and competition. Did you see some sort of change in the interest level of board games?
We never did. We kept expecting something to happen.
Yeah.
And eventually over the 20 years at different times, maybe they would give a little bit less space to the game board aisle and a little bit more, you know, to some other new digital or electronic thing.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, the board games kept coming back. And, you know, I guess the last hurrah was in the year 2000 when we had the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire game.
Right.
And I think that success would be hard to repeat because we were alone in that segment. Nobody else was doing a millionaire game. And now, you know, if we had a millionaire game, there'd be a handheld version, a computer version.
Right.
But in the beginning, in the late 70s, 80s, 90s, there might have been a little ebb and flow, but board games were doing extremely well and not affected, really.
It is quite astonishing. And even today, where they're even more ubiquitous. And even in my house, where we have several gaming consoles, we by far, as a family together, we more often play board games than any other type of game. So having all of our choices, we'll still get. And Rummikub, by the way, my mother, my wife, and daughter have their own little tournaments. As often as they can. And my daughter, who's 12, she kicks their butts. I mean, she's just quick. I can't follow.
Rummikub is in regular rotation at my house.
Is that right? That too?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I have a confession to make.
Okay.
I've never played that.
Get out of here, Kat. You're not invited.
Oh.
You're off the show.
But I want to now.
And something to look forward to for
Yes.
Kat.
Right.
That's right. I always have something to look forward to.
So I really do want to get to this story because talking about how games play such an important role in our lives, there's an interesting story in here of how a game played an interesting role in the meeting of you two, of the bringing together of Jim and Donna. Can you care to share that tale?
Oh, I've thought about this because people have asked us, and actually Jimmy doesn't know what I'm going to say next,
An exclusive.
Perfect.
it's pretty interesting because yes, I mean, I had never met anyone who, you know, created games or anything like that. So,
Sure.
you know, fun and light and exciting, and this is not to toot my horn at all. But I had been working I was working in the cosmetic industry when I met Jimmy.
Yep.
And at the time I met Jimmy, I had been in research, product development, packaging, marketing, merchandising. So the truth was we spoke the same language. When we would have conversations or whatever, I knew exactly what he was talking about. I had, you know, worked on the production line, not worked on it, but worked with everybody, you know, for first runs, quality assurance, that type of thing. So, you know, a lipstick, a board game.
Sure.
Different, but bringing something to the market the same. And we spoke the same language from the beginning.
So how did that relate to the therapy game?
We started to talk about the game
I see.
and I you know,
Right.
we spoke the same language,
Right,
sort of
right.
bringing, I mean, it's not, I don't know if it's romantic or what you want to hear, but I think as a relationship goes, we spoke the same language.
Yeah.
So that was,
There you go. I learned something.
there you go.
The language of love.
It was,
No, I can understand
Bingo.
that. Yeah, that.
we both lived in the summer. We were renting different places in the Hamptons, and Donna came over with some of her friends to visit me and my cousin who knew them, Larry. And we just were talking during the night.
No, and I saw the game, and the whole thing was very
So I gave Donna,
interesting, exciting.
I gave
to
Donna
me.
therapy, the game.
You have to put the game in there. I gave Donna therapy.
I have no idea exactly, but it was a game that was. We were talking the other day, and in those days, these kinds of adult party games were not so popular, but this was one of the first, and
Right.
Mhm.
and we related over it. So
right. Yeah.
No, I love this. I've never played therapy. I've seen it. And probably the last time I've seen it, it was one of those things where it's not for me. But now I want to play it because in the book, how it talks about how the game says you answer questions in 6 stages of life by curing other players. Quote, you never know what you will learn. End quote. Oh, I'm going to have to play with my co-hosts here.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever get to play the therapy game together?
We
did.
did.
We did.
Yeah.
I don't have a recollection of
What you learned about Donna?
Thanks for asking.
Well, you guys were married 5 years later and have been together ever since. So there you go.
Yep.
A Love Made by Pressman.
Yes.
Hey, we want to thank you, look, not only for documenting, again, this is a book for anybody. You like games, you like history, you like love stories. All right, there you go.
Right.
It's a wonderful book. It weighs way more than any Pressman game has, but it looks and is the size of one. So it'll sit right nice on the coffee table there. But thank you not only for putting this together, because it gave us such an insight into the Pressman Toy that we didn't know about, but thank you so much for what you've done. Your family has done for decades.
Okay.
Because you've brought to me and so many other folks, of course, hours and hours of enjoyment and bringing our family and friends certainly closer together, and we're certainly grateful for that.
Yes, and I'm going to ask for Rummy Cube for Christmas.
I got to make a note.
I just hope when people find the book that they'll find a lot of the games in there that they have in their closet that that they didn't came from us.
Thank you very much.
Our pleasure.
It didn't occur to me, because I don't know that it's so overt in the book, but how young Jim would be taking over the company.
So how old when he took over?
He was. Well, you really want me to do the math here?
Oh,
Let's see.
I thought you already did the math.
Let's see. He was 10 and 59.
Okay.
So what's that?
Okay.
Let's say in 79 he would have been 30. So in 76 when he was made EVP, he was 27.
Wow.
Right? Or 20, something like that, 27.
Mm-hmm.
So 78 he takes over. So he's 28 years old. Is that right?
That's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's good
So
enough.
do you remember yourself at 27?
Oh my God.
I was not prepared to be an executive at an international corporation. I can assure you.
Imagine. I know, right?
I could barely manage my own bank account, let alone.
What if right now someone said, John, can you take over this
Right. I'm nearly double
multi-million-dollar-
that age and I'm still not prepared.
Right. I mean, just so fantastic. I mean,
That is so cool.
Yeah.
I think it's cool how he said he didn't feel any pressure because
Yeah.
I think he was suggesting almost, it wasn't like he didn't have the ambition to do it anyway. So
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, oh, I guess I'm doing this. He just kind of, he kind of fell into it. And clearly he had an aptitude for it because look
my
at Pressman
goodness.
now, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was immersed in it. He grew up around it and maybe could have done without it when he was younger. But it's nice that he didn't feel that pressure. He didn't feel obligated.
Yeah,
It just happened.
And like I
organically.
told you guys earlier, I mean, incredible growth in 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really, astounding.
Mm-hmm.
And how fortunate that he would meet someone who, in some way they had like Donna was suggesting, similar, sort of this, similar experience
Mm-hmm.
and brought together by a love of a game that I'm going to play. I'm going to find that therapy game. We're going to play it together. I'm going to learn about
All
you guys.
right. Let's do it.
All right. That is our show.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
There's no amount of preparation that will.
there's no.
She's picking up a card and all it says on it is fart. That's why she's
That's
laughing.
for John. Our show is brought to you every week thanks in part to our early adopters like Kathy Burke, Rick Parker, and Karen Flieger. And thank you especially to our Secret of Our Success Level Patreon supporters, John Henderson, Craig Coletta, Marcus Taylor, and Tony Great. I always think of Tony the Tiger. It's great.
And a very special thanks once again to our sponsor, Recess Games. Seriously, if you're looking for a gift for the gamer or for yourself this holiday season, I'm talking about games, board games, puzzles, gaming accessories, as I mentioned earlier, go to recess.net, RECESS.net, for all of your gaming needs. All right. Hey, we will talk to you next time on 1980s Now.
Until next time.
Bye-bye, guys.
This podcast is part of the 80s Ruled Network. Visit the 80s Ruled on Facebook for more 1980s awesomeness.